All right, this is it. Last video for chapter 11. So let's talk about section 2. How do we protect this marine biodiversity? So legal protection. First of all, let's talk about that a little bit. So it's hard to protect marine biodiversity. So the reason why is human ecological footprints have grown. And fish prints and as a result, we need more fish. And so that whole thing's expanding and we're using more and more. And much of this ecological footprint is, of course, causing damage to the oceans. The problem with that damage to the oceans is you can't see that damage because it's under the water. And so we're not aware of the extent of the problem because we can't see it. And then there's this I think a myth out there in the world because the oceans are so expansive that they're inexhaustible resource. There's no way you can fish all the fish out of the ocean. The ocean's too big. But I think, that's a really strong misconception that we need to work our way through. And then the last part, that's maybe the biggest problem with the whole thing, is most of the ocean is away from legal jurisdiction. Nobody's in charge of it per se. It's not owned by any particular country. So there's nobody to regulate it. What has been done? Well, we've done a couple things. We've had some laws and some treaties, and we're working to educate to be able to reduce people causing extinction in marine species. We've talked about CITES and the Endangered Species Act, for instance, that have helped. Since 1989, the U.S. government has required that, like shrimp trawlers, use specific type of equipment. Turtle exclusion devices. See this turtle caught in the net? They don't let you do that. And the reason why is sea turtle tourism brings in almost 3 times as much as the money for the sale of turtle products. So we don't want to catch turtles. We want them to live because we can actually make more money off of it. There's that dolphin safe tuna thing. So the United States has done a lot of things to promote the use of the right equipment and to promote doing the right things for creatures. And so we've seen turtle numbers come back and become stronger, things like that. But the problem is it can only reach so far. Here's another success story though, whales. So there was an International Whaling Commission, the IWC, got together and basically banned the overharvesting of certain whale species. And so there was way too many of them being killed, and so they came in and said, no more. Done. This is over. And so they dropped the harvest numbers of whales significantly, 42,000 to 1,300. And as a result, the whale populations have been growing up. They've been going up to the extent that now there's so many whales that some countries are starting to think about hunting them again. And that's a cool thing that we've got back to that stage. But that doesn't mean the rest of it is quite as safe as that. And so a country's fishing and responsibilities when it comes to the ocean extend 200 miles off its shore. So if you go 200 miles from the coast, you get to the point where you're still within jurisdiction. So if you look at, say, this white line that's going around the United States here, right, and all the way through the Caribbean and then up this coast, those are the 200-mile zones, those little white specks. The U.S. is responsible for managing that stuff. Outside of that, this darker blue region, nobody's in charge of. Nobody has any legal course of action outside there. So the high seas are a lawless land. So it's very difficult to monitor and enforce any international treaties in that area because it's a lot of open space and there's no laws that bind out there. So how do you establish this global network to help solve the problem? Well, you can create a lot of marine reserves, places that are protected and not allowed to be fished and taken care of. But that can only happen within those borders of those countries that are willing to do it. But when we do it, we see some great stuff. So these marine reserves basically don't allow for commercial fishing, dredging, mining, or waste disposal in those specific areas. And we haven't even talked about waste disposal. That's a whole different issue. We'll do it in a different unit, creating its own problems in the ocean. But less human activity is allowed there. It's basically only used for recreation and shipping lanes. And so you fully protect the marine stuff in that area. The problem is very few of them, only about 2.3% of the world's oceans are marine reserves. But studies have shown that the fish populations in those places have doubled. They've grown by tons. The reproductive rates have tripled. And the biodiversity has increased a ton. And so having marine reserves matters a lot. And so if you remember the integrated pest management for farming from previous chapter, integrated coastal management is the buzz term here, the ICM. This is making conservation efforts and methods to create special situations based on regions and ecosystems that allow them to be protected and utilized for the future. Excuse me. So, let's talk about section 3 now. So how do we manage this stuff? Well, there's a couple terms for you that matter here. Maximizing sustained yield, MSY. So this is the maximum you could harvest without creating population problems. So this would be the utmost you could take out. And then there's optimum, sustained yield, OSY. And so this is taking your MSY and it's recalculating it and changing it for all those different possible interactions and things like that. It's basically creating a conservative estimate of the MSY. In case we're having any issues or problems, things we're not seeing, things are still protected. And so using the MSY, or more importantly the OSY, we can manage and only remove the amount of fish we need from specific areas to maintain them. That's all.